Okay, before we get ahead of ourselves, I want to give a little backstory to what's going on here. I took my paramotor out to the airport a few days back. Winds were decent, and I wanted to launch from my property, which is where I'm at now. I purchased this 12 acres a few years back. I've been building a house on it for some time now. And one of the reasons I bought the property was there was a beautiful opportunity to launch from this space. And I hadn't taken the class, I hadn't done training, but I recognized that that was in my immediate future, so this was all preparation for that. The problem is, once I did my training and recognized it's not as easy to just launch a paramotor from wherever you want as I had thought. So looking at my property, I started to question, I knew it was possible, but I really wanted to see someone do it first, and I didn't have that option. So my first attempt in doing this was shortly after I had gotten back from training. I had many successful launches. I felt very confident, and I tried launching from the property, and there's a little bit of crosswind, and I wasn't paying much attention to it, and the wing kind of pulled me over. I didn't apply enough brake, and I busted a prop, so it sort of discouraged me from getting into this again until I had a few more flights under my belt. Well, since then, I've added another 13 or 14 more flights. So this was a really good evening, and I thought this was my opportunity to do this. Now, this area I'm launching from is directly in front of the house. We typically have a beautiful mountain view. It's a little bit hazy today. The grassy area, the reason it's lined like that is we had a septic system installed last year, and we're in the process of replanting grass. So my trip hazard, my hose there, of course, I felt apparently confident I would step right over that, which I did, but next time I will change that. Now I lit a little fire in the barrel just to give you an idea where the wind is blowing, and you can see there's a little bit of a tailwind for this particular launch. Probably nothing noticeable, but it is there. I thought that would be advantageous when I'm actually going to be landing, because I'll be coming toward the front of the house for my landing. So I like recording my launches so I can analyze what I'm doing, critique myself, and improve. In this particular launch, I had a tailwind, so I gave it a little bit extra throttle to get that wing up quickly. And as you can see, it climbed nice, inflated well. As it gets to my peak here, I'm not quite fully on top, but I release my A's about right here. Now I'm not leaning back as much as I would like to be, partly because I'm going downhill, first time. But this is where things get interesting. So you can see I've got my arms at about just past nipple, and I've got a little bit of flare. Not a whole lot for launching at this point. So I go down a little further. And now I'm adding too much flare. And there's a little dirt pile there. I kicked that with my foot. It looks like the cage hits the ground, but it's my foot hitting the dirt. But anyway, that flare is obviously enough to get me up, but you can see the wing starts to pull back a little bit. Fortunately, I brought my arms up immediately once I left the ground. The wing went back to normal, and I climbed very quickly out of this. The concern would have been if I would have held that flare much longer, it probably would have stalled the wing out. Now, this is my first flight from this area, and I needed to get off the ground quickly because I really wasn't sure what my climb rate would have been. So I think I added excessive brake pressure because I knew I needed to get off the ground quickly, thinking I needed to get between those trees. And now doing it one time and recognizing how quickly I was able to increase my altitude, that I was actually able to go over the trees, I will definitely compensate for that next time. What I like about the ground camera is it's giving me a view that I don't get from this view. I felt like everything went fine. I had no idea that I was flaring too much. I didn't know the wing was close to stalling out. I felt like it came up good. I climbed very nicely, and I got over this tree line just fine. So anyway, I would recommend anybody in the early stages to record themselves as much as possible. I really like that during our training at Aviator. We would record each other and then review the footage back in the classroom. It still helps at this point. Now, one thing I didn't do in preparation for this flight was check the weather, check the wind speed at altitude. As soon as I got above those trees, it got gusty. It was, after looking at it when I landed, I was looking at 15 to 18 mile per hour winds above the tree line here. So it wasn't a very comfortable flight at this point, but it was also a good opportunity for me to build more trust in my wing and how to navigate some of these conditions. Now, as I'm making my turn back toward my property, I'm apparently hitting a pretty strong headwind, and I'm basically paraparked at this point. Now, my trims, I haven't adjusted them since I've gotten in the air, so this is my opportunity to adjust my trims, see if I can build a little bit more ground speed so I can work my way back home. Now, as I mentioned in my last video, I really like the tip steering of this Spider wing. There's something to do with the brakes, and I remember flying the Mojo during training at Aviator. You had to give it a good pull, but it did respond pretty well. And I think the fact that the brake lines are so long on this Spider wing, and I did take 2 inches off, and after this flight I actually took 2 more inches, and I'll test that on my next run. But I do feel like you saw on my launch that I had to pull down quite a ways just to get a reaction from the wing in order to take off. Well, it's the same way when I'm flying, and when the conditions are windy like this, I really don't like adding a lot of brake pressure. I don't feel secure with that quite yet. So the tip steering helps me define the path that I want to go without having to add excessive brake pressure. So it took some time, but I was able to work my way back to my starting point, and I started to come in a little bit low. I just wanted to look at the conditions, and then I started to feel the rotor coming off the tree line, and it was choppy. I was dancing around quite a bit here. Now I got a little bit nervous. I wanted to give it more throttle, make sure I was over the trees and clear, but I haven't quite gotten comfortable with that quite yet. A number of my flights have been in no wind, working on no-wind launches and getting up. The air is buttery smooth, but this environment was a little bit difficult, so I was nervous about my landing, so I wanted to make sure I gave myself plenty of approach time and preparation for that. Okay, I got myself turned around. I'm heading west right toward the sunset, and you can see where the property starts just past that little fence. And at this point it kind of hit me that I haven't targeted my landings very well up to this point at the airport. They're getting better and my competency is building, but I didn't want to cut this one short because I actually have a horse fence in there, and I didn't want to slam into the side of the house either. But I think I timed it pretty well here, but even with my trims pulled all the way in, you can see my ground speed is very quick. So even with a pretty solid flare here, it doesn't slow me down all that much. Now slowing this down a little bit helps me break it down. So as I'm coming in, I do a nice foot drag across the gravel. And I think I flared the wing too fast because I was trying to slow myself down quickly, and I think that's what happened. It pulled back. You can see from this little footage my daughter got, I'm coming down, my arms go down quick, the wing pulls back to a more of a stall position, which pulled me back, caused me to get my feet out in front of me and the butt hit the ground. Fortunately, my cage didn't touch the ground, so there was no issue there. Now the other factor is I was landing on an uphill, and that of course makes things much more difficult. I don't have the running opportunity as much. I'm sinking much quicker. I should have landed up closer to the house. But all in all, this was a good experience. First time flying from this location. I will definitely be waiting for calmer conditions next time around. But in the end, I left this flight feeling accomplished. I was able to overcome a challenge, and I know each flight from this point on will only get stronger and stronger. I hope this was able to help you in some ways, flying in different environments or taking off from different locations. Thanks for watching.